Good afternoon. Okay, the election is over. Now what? What do we do now? There's no more political ads on TV or there's no more text messages blowing up your phone about going to vote, right? It's over. So what do we do now? What's going to happen now? Well, the answer is really pretty simple. Uh, it's back to business as usual. Okay, but what does that mean? What does that mean if for you, you haven't been on top of your business. You haven't been on top of your legal affairs. What does that mean for you when it comes to your legal planning, your estate planning, your business organization? If even before the election you haven't been in charge of it as you could have been, well, that's okay because in today's video, we are going to discuss some major issues that often get overlooked, not just in everyday life, but especially in light of national events, huge national events, such as the presidential election. However, all the issues that we discussed today are evergreen. So that means that year round, once again, there are issues to consider month by month, week by week, quarter by quarter. It doesn't have to wait for an election cycle. Okay, we can always make these changes, and that's what makes it so powerful because it's up to us to do it. We don't have to wait for the incoming administration to act, okay? But it will be pertinent to just also plan and adjust according to whatever the incoming administration will do and what that administration, how they will have an impact on these issues that we're going to discuss today. But again, the key is knowing that these things that we're going to discuss today are all in your control. And whatever happened with the election is just a matter of you making adjustments as needed. But as long as you're on top of these issues, you'll be okay. All right. So with that said, here are four questions, four issues that we're going to consider now that the election has passed. And remember, we're talking about kind of business and estate planning, legal affairs. Okay. These are just four. All right. Four very common ones that happen all the time. But this is not an exhaustive list. All right. So continue to follow, like, and subscribe as we continue to talk about more of the issues. All right. But here we go. Four issues to consider now that the election has passed. The first one, who do I want the house to go to? How is your house titled? How is your house being protected? How is your property being protected? Okay, we're just talking about right now residential, your residential home. How is it titled? Is it on its way to probate court? Um, have you done anything where you can avoid probate court? If you have more than one property, right, whether it's residential, whether it is investment property, whether it is any other kind of commercial property, you have Airbnbs, etc., how have you titled them? Do you personally own them? Are they in a trust, right? Are they all in their specific LLC? Is there a company LLC, an umbrella LLC? How are you structuring them? All right. That is going to be key for several reasons. First, let's get into just the residential property. All right. Let's say the main home. For many, many, many millions of people, the main home is their primary asset. Okay. So that means that most of the wealth is in the home, whether it is actual value, whether it is kind of equitable value, whether they're drawing down on a home line of equity. Most of it is going to be tied up in that house. It's going to be their most valuable asset. Um, and when it comes to residential real estate, that one property, no matter what you think, okay, parents, we know this about our kids, it doesn't fade when they become adults, all right? No matter what you think, if your wishes for that home is not clearly known and in writing, the kids are fighting over it. And kids in this case can be 60, 70-year-old people. It will happen, it can happen, it is happening now, okay? I have a case with such now that's winding down. I've seen so many cases of it play out in court, in the public. Okay, just last week, five, six of them, six kids fighting over the house. All right, all grown, all retired, and still just squabbling over it because there's no plan in place. Mother passed away with no plan in place. Now, if it's not that, if they're not fighting over it, then the other advantage of putting something in writing is to keep it out of court. Okay, you can title your house in a certain way to keep it at least out of court. And then if the kids need to fight over it after that, it's not right there on the record. It's not right there in public, or you can just give them a share. I mean, there are so many different varieties of what you can do to protect that main family asset, if that's your wish, to keep it in the family and to distribute it to whom you would like. Okay. So that's just for main residential real estate. When it comes to investors, always have somewhere for your property to flow. Okay, always have your property protected somewhere. I know of a case, it wasn't my case, but I know of a case where an individual passed away. Okay, he was a real estate investor. He had at least 20 different properties. All right, none of them were protected in like a trust or an LLC where that um, entity would own the homes and then a beneficiary would be named to take over the homes. So that means that the daughter, okay, right, who would be his legal heir at law, had to open up an estate and probate court for each one to distribute each one of those properties. Okay. Talk about money, time, just hassle when that could be accomplished in so many better ways. All right. Again, and we're going to talk about it a little bit next week as well. But when it comes to trusts, when it comes to LLCs, right, some kind of umbrella organization entity that can own those homes and then um, include plans of how to distribute them, or, what beneficiary to take over. This stuff is so important. It's so key rather than having to probate 20 different houses. That is a lot of work and it's just exhausting. And for the average person who does not know the principles of probate law, who's not familiar with the courts, it is just an entirely different language. It's like, um, having to be forced into China and you don't speak Chinese, right? Forced because you have to go there. If there's no other avenue for the houses to flow to or flow down to, and it has to end up in probate court. And then another language because you don't speak the language of the court. You're not used to what's going on every single day. All right. Be very stressful, very overwhelming, so much of a hassle. Take care of it on the front end. And again, this is no matter what happens with the election. There's always going to be ways to take care of those properties. All right. Land is always going to have value. That's been the case from the beginning. One thing though, when it comes to the election, if you don't since we're talking about government, okay, if you don't have a will, any other estate plan, you pass away, and there's no one else that can legally at law um, inherit that property, by default, it will revert back to the government. That means by default, the government will recoup the property. Now, if you want the government to be your ultimate beneficiary, don't do anything. But if you want to keep your property out of the government's hands at all costs in that manner, have a plan in place. Okay. So that's just houses. That's just real estate. And that's just a small snippet of real estate. All right. But again, just something to consider, get the wheels going as the election has passed and as we move into 2025 and think about what are we really doing and what do we want to bring into the new year. Okay. The second is, what do I want to happen to my money in the bank right now? All right. And this is an easy one, but so many people just, because I think it's so simple, people just overlook it. When it comes to just money in the bank right now, whether it's the bank, the credit union, stock options, okay, savings, all of that. Do you have beneficiary designations in place so that your money is going directly to who you want it to go to instead of getting swallowed up by probate court? Again, this is an easy way for the money to flow, the cash to flow, right? When it comes to our assets, we want to protect them as much as possible from going to probate court because then it's public. There's costs involved that we don't need to pay for if we have it privately held, if we do it privately. A lot of stress once again and the hassles of the court process, but also because we're controlling who we want our assets to go to and flow down to. Okay. Because why are you working so hard, you have all this money in the bank just to leave it up to whatever the court may say, right? You control it. Just like how you go to that bank and you deposit your money, you withdraw it, you spend on your card, you do this, you do that. Name someone to take over to be able to do all those same things. What are you working so hard for? All right. And this is an easy one. Set up a beneficiary designation for your accounts. Universally, banks will allow you to do that. And make sure you know you want it to be the person that you want the money to go to, that they know it, so that if anything happens, all they need to do is essentially present their ID and the death certificate, and the bank will transfer the funds over. Okay, it won't be a whole probate court process thing. That's here in Michigan. May be different in other states, but it's pretty smooth as long as, the beneficiary is known. Otherwise, the banks don't usually let you know anything about your account, okay, if it's not known. Same thing with life insurance policies and retirement accounts. Okay, these are easy ones where you can name someone to inherit those funds. All right. Um, a lot of stuff in that too. Some tax consequences. We're gonna have a special tax class, okay, before the end of the year. I don't want to get in too much into it now, but just know for now that any account that you can leave a beneficiary on, do that. Because if not, that account will be open to probate court and we'll have to go through the probate court process for the funds to be distributed to your heir. And that may not be who you want it to be. Okay. So just keep that in mind. And so let's get into who do I want to leave my money to, right? When it comes to, again, heirs at law are people that will naturally kind of inherit from you. So if you're a parent, it would be your children. If you're married, it would be your spouse, right? When it comes down to the last living spouse, it would be the children. Um, if you are an adult, you don't have any children yet, it would be a parent. Okay, so just kind of like these immediate family connections are usually who your heirs at law are going to be, depending on your own status and what you have going on in life. All right. But that doesn't always mean that's who you want it to go to. How are those family relationships looking like? Unfortunately, we don't always get along with our family. And it's not something that I think is normal, quote unquote, but it happens. All right. It happens a lot. It's not a point of shame because everybody has different personalities and we can't force others to like us, accept us, or to think along the same lines as we do. And sometimes that includes family members, and that's just what it is. Okay. So with that being said, there might be family that you don't want to get a hold of these funds. But maybe that is your next of kin and you don't have anybody else to replace them with, then if there's no one else to inherit, that's kind of who the government will be looking for. Okay. Another point is when it comes to minor children, um, yeah, you want to leave that to them, but they can't inherit it immediately, okay, because they're still young. They're not old enough to handle funds, etc. So you can do that, but it would have to be through someone else who can manage it for them, whether that be a guardian you name, a conservator, whether it be just placed in trust for them, but then you'd have to have a trustee. So be careful with minors, okay? Make sure you talk with somebody who's a trained professional that can help you accomplish that because it can be done, but you just want to be careful instead of just naming the minor's name itself as an individual. All right. And then also when it comes to family members who might have issues with money for whatever reason. Maybe they are spendthrifts. That means that they just take money and spend it right away. They don't save, they don't invest. Maybe it is family members that have addictions. Okay, and that's what they're going to spend their money on, whether it's gambling, whether it is drinking, some other kind of drugs. This has happened. Okay, I've had clients in the past, elderly clients who love their children but can only leave so much to one and not as much to another because that other one has some drug issues that they need to solve. And whatever they're going to leave to them right now in that condition that they're in, they're just going to waste it. Okay. And so you don't want that to just go to waste when you're gone. So that's why it's important to consider who you want to leave your money to. All right. So it won't get, again, swallowed up in probate court. So it goes to the appropriate individuals. So it goes to who you want it to go to. And in consideration of that, when is the last time you updated your beneficiary? When's the last time you looked? It's a good idea to look maybe every quarter at least. Okay. But with that being said, if you have experienced recently some major life events, such as birth, right? Birth of a child, so you've added to the family, death, so you've had some kind of loss from the family, whether it's a spouse, a child, right? A parent, adoption of a child, whether you just got married, whether you just got divorced. These all come into factors again when it comes to your heirs at law. Who can you leave to? Who do you want to leave to? And so if you haven't updated your documents recently, you want to do that. All right. When is the last time you've done it? There have been many cases, and I'm talking about big sums of money too, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's not small chump change, okay, where an individual inherited that much money from a person that they, dated decades back, but because the policy never changed, because the individual who passed never made any changes or made the company aware that that's who it's to go to, that's who it went to. And now the individual's family has to fight with this other person who just basically inherited a fortune, right? But had no blood connection to them. They were not married, no children, no nothing like that, but just somebody that was named and never taken off. And that is the danger of not updating because that can and it does happen. And because that's kind of an agreement between you and the company, that is the agreement that will be honored. The court will not supersede that. All right. 9 times out of 10. I've not seen it done. So it's almost a shoe-in that, you know, you had the chance to change it and you didn't change it, and this is what it's going to be. Okay, so be very careful with your beneficiary designations. Make sure you have them in place, but it's never a one and done. Always adjust, especially as these life changes occur. All right. And the last one we're going to consider for today, and we're going to, again, this is just touching on the issue. All right, is how do I want my business to run after I'm gone? And not just your business in terms of like your profit making business. So if you have an LLC, if you have an S corp, a C corp, even any big institutional business, not just that, but also your state of affairs. Okay, so let's get into the money making business first. Some things to consider. Do you have a succession plan in place? Who is going to take your place, right? Do you have an operating agreement? Is that clear, right? This is how the business runs. That's our operating agreement. If it is a family business, would you like to keep it in the family, right? Is the family in it now? How would you like that to be done? I've met many, not contractors, but many tradesmen, okay, plumbers, carpenters, general contractors, things like that, who have been very successful, have had great businesses, they've done well, but you could tell there was not a lot of succession planning done because basically once they retired, there was no one to take over the business. So the business just closed. Okay. Children didn't want it. There wasn't a business partner. And so essentially the business is gone. The business can outlast you. The business is designed to outlast you. Okay. I always, when I give this presentation around these issues, I ask, um, about the Apple company, right? Apple, $1 trillion company, most profitable, most valuable company in the world. And I always ask, when you think of Apple, who do you think of? And the first name, without question, is Steve Jobs, right? He was the thought leader behind Apple. He was the Imagineer. He was the innovator. He's been, deceased for at least 12 years. I think he passed in 2011, 2012. I can't remember exactly, but at least that long. But we still remember his name, right? Because that is just the power of what he left in it. And then obviously Apple as a big major organization, they have their business in order. So I think it's Steve Cook is the CEO now, right? There's always going to be someone to take over. There's always going to be that person. But your business can be exactly the same because the same principles can apply. All right. And so I like to think big in that way because it's not impossible. It's not out of reach. It's the same principles just running and running and running at a different level. Okay. So that's when it comes to like the LLCs, the profit making business. And when it comes to your business of affairs, how do you want that to be run after you're gone? How do you conduct your affairs now? Are you organized? Are you disorganized? Are you sloppy? Do you execute efficiently? Like, what is your standard right now? And I ask this because, I was following a case recently, I think within the last year, uh, locally here in Michigan, not in Detroit, but in Michigan, and kind of like our southeast regional area, of a very prominent individual who passed away. Um, Very prominent, right? Nationally known. Um, Kind of a force in the community, all of that. But the affairs played out in public because like there was no will. Nobody knows where anything is. There are people like just kind of grasping for straws. None of this individual died. The business was disorderly. Okay. No matter how prominent this individual was, no matter how much kind of publicity they had and prominence, the business was disorganized. It was disorderly. Was there even money to be had from there? How would they be accessed? The air is fighting with this over here. I mean, it's just it's like if a balloon popped and then the water just splattered everywhere if it's a water balloon. I mean, it was just messy. And is that how you want your life to play out after you're gone? It's very unfortunate. And we see it a lot with celebrities too, right? Kind of the family issues come out to light. Um, and I saw one recently that I was just like, wow, it's just heartbreaking a little bit because you have an amount of respect for an individual just based on what you've seen from them publicly, right? Which again, we don't always know what's going on behind the scenes. But then after they pass away, there's just this nastiness that spills out. And that does happen because it's emotional, right? People grieve, or maybe they've been holding on to pent up feelings for so long, and that death is a release of it, right? But you can help to facilitate that because if people know who you are and they know what you're about, and this is how you conduct your business, make sure you institutionalize that in something that will outlast you. Again, your will, your trust, your actual business, right? Whether it be your LLC, whatever. Have very clear standards, very clear agreements. Make it known what will be tolerated, what won't. And that let that be your last word, your last will, right? Let that be done. And that way your business is maintained, it's still conducted in an orderly fashion after you're gone, right? And then that speaks volumes about you and how you lived because it's also how you died, all right? Very powerful principle there. I don't think a lot of us really consider that, but for sure, start thinking about it if you haven't already. And it would just make everything flows so much easier for your family, your loved ones, your colleagues, your employees, whomever, knowing that you even thought enough about them to make sure that this will run as smoothly as possible during their time of grief while they're mourning you. Okay, so that is our video for today when it comes to what you need to protect after the election. All right, the major issues to consider, and where do you go from here, right? Have you considered these things already? Do you have a plan in place for them? And if not, when do you start? You can start now. You can start now. Okay. You can check the link in our bio if you're in Michigan. We are doing annual reviews. We're calling them our Thrive annual strategy sessions. All right. Well, we can go over your entire business of affairs, your legal affairs, and get you ready going into 2025. Okay. For the best. Again, it's not a one and done. If you have something already, might be a good time to freshen it up, right? Talk about those beneficiaries. Are they updated? Are they up to what your life is looking like now? Forecast a little bit. What is your life going to look like next year? And start to think about that. So if you want to check that out, the link is in our bio. And also, if this video was helpful for you, please do like it, share it, subscribe. Let us know. Give us some feedback. We're always looking to add more value to you. All right. And if not, then we will see you again next week with more. Okay. Take care.